Okay, and the last thing we have to do is tweak this limiter here, the Pro L. It's been on this whole time, and now we actually want to use it to start making things louder and get some gain reduction out of it to chop off some of the transients as well. So just like with all of their other plugins, it's extremely flexible. There are 4 different styles. You can control the look-ahead time, attack and release, and you can control how the transients are linked in terms of limiting and the stereo as well. So if this is at 100%, then the left and the right channels are being limited at the same time. And the same goes with the transients. Apparent results may be at the cost of some loudness. Except for the transients, actually. If you turn the transient link down, you can achieve a little bit more loudness. So we're going to play around with these settings. I'm aiming for an RMS somewhere between -9 and -8, so that is pretty loud. Not as loud as commercially released stuff nowadays, which is at like -6, but still really, really loud. So I'm going to put the output at -0.1 where it is. Put the gain all the way down to 0, and Pro L has a really neat function where, just let me put this back at -0.1. It has a really neat function where you can control the input gain and the output at the same time. So it lets you, as you push this gain up, this output level will come down so the volume stays the same and you can hear what the limiter is actually doing. So I'm going to demonstrate this for you. And the way you do it is you press on a Mac. If you're on a Mac, you press Option and you click on the gain here, and you can see the output knob turn as you're turning this up. So very, very useful. If you're on a PC, then that is the Alt button on your keyboard. So press Alt or Option, turn this up, and this will let you hear at the same level what the limiter is doing. If you go too far, you're going to start hearing your song getting crushed, and then you just back off a little bit. So let's go to the loudest section in the song and do exactly that. Okay, so past this 16.3, you can start to hear the kick drum and the transients getting crushed, and that's not what we want to do. All right, so now that we've set the gain, we can start playing with the different styles, the look-ahead time. The shorter the look-ahead time, the more loudness you can get at the cost of distortion. The higher the look-ahead time, the more transparent the limiting is and the smoother it is. Same thing with the attack. If you put a really fast attack, it'll kill the transients and the punch of your song. Too high and you won't get enough loudness. Same thing with the release. A snappy release will give you more loudness. A slower release will give you a more transparent limiting. And like I said, when you unlink the transients, you'll get a more transparent results. And we can play around with the release as well. For now, let's first pick the style. I'm going to go a little bit extreme with the limiter so I can just hear what these different styles sound like. And so I can actually set these settings. So I like this dynamic style here. It's kind of a balance between the pumping and it preserves the transients a little bit. and it's not as dark as the punchy and the all-round. I like this dynamic setting. Let's play around with the look-ahead time. One millisecond should be just fine. Okay, so I like these settings here. Look ahead time 1 millisecond, attack 30 milliseconds, release 45 milliseconds, transient link at 30%, stereo link at 40%, and this just opens up. It preserves the width, the wideness of the song. When you put the release at 100%, it kind of flattens it out a bit, makes it sound a little bit more narrow, not as open. All right, and now we want to scale this back to 16.3 where it was, and then we can move this back to minus 0.1. And there we go. Here you have oversampling, and I'm going to turn it on, 4 times oversampling. And then you also have this option here, which is intersample peaks, right? And make sure it's turned on, especially if you are going a little bit overboard with the gain reduction. You want to turn this thing on. It's kind of like a protection from clipping, if you want, extra protection from clipping. So turn this on and the oversampling on, and let's take a listen again, now at maximum loudness. Okay, and that is it for the limiting, guys. You can see on the RMS reading that we are at an RMS of around somewhere between -9 and -8 dB. So that is really loud. And we've tweaked all the settings here to get the most punch and the most power out of the song. I've also increased the gain just a little bit to get it up to -9 or -8 dB. Loudness is completely a personal choice. It's completely up to you how loud you want your music. If you want it ridiculously loud, then there are other things that you have to do in your mix and in your master to make sure that you can get to that loudness. You need to make absolutely sure that you're controlling the peaks and the transients at every stage of the mixing and mastering process if you want to go that loud. For this song, it's a nice dynamic song. It's meant to be smooth, So I don't want to go that far and completely crush the song. So now what we can do is compare before and after all this processing. So again, I'm going to keep the limiter on outside of the plugins, and that will ensure that we're getting the same loudness. We're comparing at the same loudness because the limiter is outside of the plugin group. So let's take a listen to the chorus section, and then I'll disable and enable the plugins so we can hear the difference. So you can hear the track is a lot more balanced. It's a lot more focused. The frequencies don't mask each other as much as they were before. The high mids are not as overpowering as they were before. So I think it sounds a lot better with all the processing on. Of course, you can tweak this master, for months and months if you wanted to. I mean, you can go back to the EQ, for example, and you can create more width by maybe boosting some frequencies in the sides to create some extra width in the song, perhaps. There's so many things you can do with this, and there are so many different ways you can master your tracks. But in terms of using FabFilter plugins to master a dynamic, kind of progressive style house track like this, this is how I would master this track if I were doing it for a client. So I really hope you learned a lot from this course. There are many techniques that we went over. And like I said, there are many, many more that you can build on. You can build on all the techniques that you learned today and, maybe get even better than this master.